It is the breath, who you are. I mean, it's an expression of who you are in every moment. And so that's where I found the best therapies were, and the ancient therapies as well. They're, from time immemorial, whether it's Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, this is where we start. You start where you are, and your breath is where you are.
You're listening to the Feed Your Wild podcast, a conscious lifestyle show about all things nourishing for your body, mind, and soul. I'm Vanessa Rodriguez, and join me for candid conversations with changemakers, exploring health and wellness, food as medicine, intuition and spirituality, and nature-based practices that will transform your health and feed all parts of your wild self. Hey, welcome back to Feed Your Wild. This is your host, Vanessa Rodriguez, functional nutritionist, Akashic record reader, and intuitive nourishment guide. And today I am thrilled to introduce you to Allison Post. If you don't already know Allison, you are in for a treat. She is so full of heart and love and integrity in her work, and I knew right away in diving into her book, Gut Wellness, which we get to talk about in this episode, that I had to have her on the podcast to really share her wisdom after working decades to support people in their health. Allison is an integrative medicine health coach and somatic educator. She's been trained in a ton of different traditions and body work systems and methods. She's guided many people through a plethora of challenges, and she's also the author of the Gut Wellness Guide, The Power of Breath, Touch, and Awareness to Reduce Stress, Aid Digestion, and Reclaim Whole Body Health. I was introduced to Allison and her work through her book that I just mentioned, as well as one of my mentors, Andrea Nakayama, whom I had on the podcast recently as well. She has a podcast through her company, Functional Nutrition Alliance, called the 15-Minute Matrix. By the way, if you have not checked out 15-Minute Matrix and you're into nutrition, functional medicine, holistic health, this is definitely one to geek out on. I love these podcast episodes that Andrea puts out, and I love the one that she did with Allison. So I'll make sure to link that up as well. Allison describes her book, Gut Wellness, as a book about how to tap the power of your intuition by nurturing the vitality of the physical belly to use your guts in positive ways for health and happiness. And I'm all over that. I know you're going to love this information. Also, in related and exciting news, my upcoming program, which I may have mentioned in previous podcast episodes, sort of seeding it, is called Feed Your Wild Gut. I will be talking more about this program in this week's live webinar called Soul Gut Immunity Guide. So I'm going to mention a little bit about it at the end, and you will hear more about this program once it goes live this Wednesday. Feed Your Wild Gut is essentially an immersive program that's focusing on the wild terrain of gut health on a body, mind, and soul level. It's designed to support healers, helpers, change makers, cultivate wild harmony in the gut so they can build resilience, boost their vitality, and connect in with their intuition and personal power for radical transformation, because that's what we're here to do. Yes, all of those who are here in service to the world and to others and to a greater vision that we hold for this earth. Raise your hand if you are with me. This is to support you. And the cool and amazing thing is I'm bringing in incredible guest teachers, one of which is Allison Post. And I can't stop smiling because Her teachings are really profound in their effectiveness and simplicity. And Allison's class is going to be around breath and touch techniques for nourishing gut health, as well as emotional and heart coherence. I'll be sharing more about other guest teachers and classes that are going to be included in this program. But today, we're going to shine the light on Allison and her work. In this conversation, we get into what Allison does. She explains her process of healing work and what guided her into this world of holistic healing, breath work, somatic touch, and the gut. Allison has such a compelling story of healing. It truly is amazing, the transformation that she has been through. I'm grateful that she chooses to share that and bring her findings and her experience into her healing work. So Allison shares some of the challenging traumas and health crises that led her to a healing path, and how yoga and breath was a really big part of that. We get into Allison's concept of unwinding and why Allison believes that going straight into those harder, deeper gut therapies right away can actually be ineffective and even detrimental. Allison shares why it's critical that we meet our healing from a different paradigm and way of being that invites slowness. So she walks us through the first steps of this process of unwinding that folks with gut issues can take. And Allison shares wonderful prompts to cultivate awareness of our gut and body to unveil root issues and interconnections within the dis-ease. We talk about the significance of belly breathing and what that looks like in Allison's work, as well as the navel as an artifact and a bridge. Allison shares a gentle, visceral technique that she utilizes in her work with delicate touch, and how co-regulation through our navel influences our nervous system and ultimately the health of our gut. I love this conversation because there's a lot of reframing here. So often, I myself, in my personal experience with my health, as well as working with so many different practitioners and providers and clients in that way, there is a paradigm of going in, quote, straight for the kill, or going deep and hard, and almost with this attacking type of mentality or getting rid of type of mentality. And I love how Allison invites us into this reframe of a lot of these different concepts, such as going deep, and why deep is more about engaging in relationship and being with presence and love versus going deep and hard with techniques and modalities. I believe this conversation is not just good for those who are experiencing issues with their guts, but also anybody who is in a healing crisis, who's been dealing with health challenges for a long time. These are really critical healing concepts that are transmitted through this conversation and Allison's work that I invite you to sit in on and receive. So, with that, let's get into our conversation with Allison. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Feed Your Wild. Today, we have Allison Post on. Allison is an integrative medicine health coach and somatic educator. In a career spanning 4 decades, she has taught courses in many modalities of massage, breath, and body work, and has helped thousands of adults and children with chronic illness, digestive discomfort, and physical challenges. She guides people through the transitions of pregnancy, birth, chronic stress, menopause, aging, grief and loss, and trauma arising from injury, surgery, and personal crisis. Her curiosity had led her to explore many disciplines, and she has pursued education in Asian and Western bodywork, Qi Nai Sang, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, internal organ massage, visceral manipulation, acupuncture, and traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, hypnotherapy, dance, somatic psychology, and craniosacral therapy. Her latest book, co-authored with her husband, is The Gut Wellness Guide, the power of breath, touch, and awareness to reduce stress, aid digestion, and reclaim whole body health. The heart of Allison's philosophy and practice is to help people gently sense into the breath and the whole body to tap into what she calls the inherent health, the capacity to heal every moment of every day. Allison, I'm so grateful to have you on today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
I love reading that last line about tapping into what you call the inherent health. And, in my language, that's our inherent wild self and that capacity to heal. I'm curious, I know that every time you introduce yourself and maybe with the titles of Integrative Medicine Health Coach and Somatic Educator, people are like, what does that really mean? So I'd love for you to speak into what is it that you do and also maybe to give people sort of perspective of the type of work that you do.
Well, mostly I'm a teacher and I guess a holder of space. I love to teach people how their breath can actually lead them into their own safe body, that we're born with the skills and the knowledge, the inherent health of how to grow and heal every moment of every day. From the moment of conception, our body knows it's programmed, it's nature given that we start to create ourselves. And even when we're 50, 80, 20, doesn't matter what age we are, our body every moment is creating ourselves and healing from whatever is happening from the outside in, and then we're healing from the inside out. That's just how we're set up. So that's inherent health. I think a lot of what I try to help people with is, first of all, not to have an agenda. I think that's my biggest level of expertise, if you want to call anything expertise, is that I don't have a program. I have a philosophy that allows me to deeply listen to each person and to create a safe space for them to feel themselves no matter what's happened to them. Because really, in this day and age, what we know is that every person has suffered some level and some degree or some event that has caused trauma in their body and in their system. And in order to heal and be well, we need to have an immune system that understands that we can rest, digest, and repair. And we can also be excited and have fun and be your wild self, as you would say. But we have to know what those places are. And a lot of people don't. So my job is to create a safe space for people to feel themselves, to know that they can breathe from who they are, not what they're reacting to outside of themselves or reacting to because of surgery or injury, and just to start to calm down the nervous system, allow the body to be three-dimensional and embodied, and to be quiet and still, but move and be easeful. So I have a lot of skills that I use to help people in those moments when they're with me, either online or in my office, just to learn how to be with their breath instead of doing their breath. My work is just a little bit different, and then I don't give too much of a linear or exercises, so to speak. I invite people to actually sense in to what's happening there so that they can be aware of it and then relax.
I really appreciate that approach and perspective, because what I'm hearing is that it's really honoring the person's ability to heal themselves and really tune into those faculties and that capacity. And then you as a partner in this, healing partnership to help assist them versus, maybe being some sort of like a guru or someone telling them exactly what to do that may not be in full alignment with them.
Right. It is that, they do have that capacity to heal. They might not know it in that moment, and they may be in a state that's really challenging for them. But if I just start putting things onto the healing process, or I create that process instead of allow it to really organically come from who they are and what they tell me and how free they are to speak, how free they are to tell me in every moment how safe they feel, how comfortable they are. And if my suggestions or the space I'm holding for them is good for them. It's a loving place, really. I think if you really want to know, my expertise is to love and to hold love in the environment, because I think love is really what heals. And the comfort of knowing somebody is truly there for you it's just incredible for people to know that, wow, somebody really wants me to be safe, and therefore I'm being rocked, I'm being held, I'm being loved. And I don't know if we can heal if we're not in that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, I think you're speaking into a much larger issue of, I would say, a deficiency in our healthcare or disease management system. There doesn't seem to be that space with love and heart medicine in that way that you're talking about, that I also believe contributes to a lot of the illness as well.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. I think I'm hoping that whatever's going on in our day and age here with the pandemic, and actually with everything down the cultural realms of what we're dealing with, that we start bringing that love into the healthcare system, that people don't have to go to alternatives in order to be loved, but that we build it inherently in our healthcare system, because it should be a health care system. We should be giving people the skills of nourishment, of self-knowledge, not just something to fix something and to keep them on a bandwagon of fixing. It's an economic thing. I don't think healthcare is an economic situation. We can all be nourished and we can all receive what we need, but we have to give in order to receive. And I just think we can all get together. And I see it happening in certain spheres of healthcare, that, there's integrative medicine centers where there are different practitioners and there's a panel of people. When I lived in Tucson, Arizona in the 90s, Andrew Weil is from Tucson, and he started the first integrative medicine teaching facility with 4 teachers at the time. And I worked with one of them from a visceral breath capacity, because he really wanted to bring that in, and always has in his work. So it is out there. I just think we need to spread it a little bit more and understand that that is the kind of environment we need in order to heal. That love needs to be brought in, and not in 7-minute segments. But, we need to have time to listen to patients and clients. So,
yes. And what brings me a lot of hope is that I hear from so many people who listen to this podcast, and even clients who I work with, who are really drawn to this new paradigm of health, and new old, right? Because I feel that it is the original. Exactly. and so there's a lot of budding practitioners, and I use the term healer. I've really done a lot of work around my relationship to this concept of healer, and really just seeing as this an assistant to one's own healing. But there's many folks listening in who are struggling with their own challenge and may not be fully feeling into that paradigm, that like love, that medicine from the love that you're speaking into, because of prior experiences they've had in the system. And I know that you too have had your own experiences. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing how you sort of came into this work, or, aspects of your story that you feel might be helpful for others to hear.
Well, I had a very challenging childhood with a lot of problems in my family. My sister was mentally ill, and my parents got divorced when I was very young. And when I was 5, I actually had a brain trauma that I had to recover from. So from 5 years old, I had some difficulty being in a body and being comfortable in a body. And of course, there was a lot of stress in my household. So stress became, from a very early age, something that I had to navigate. And so I was actually in music. I was a musician from the time I was very, very young. And I wanted to be a singer and went into theater. But unfortunately, when I was a teenager in my late teens, I had a form of birth control that was later taken off the market. It was called a Dalkon Shield because it killed 18 women and actually took the right of millions of women to their bodies, because many women, including myself, could no longer bear children. I suffered with an inordinate amount of scarring in my pelvis from pelvic inflammatory disease as a result of the device. And I was young. I was 19 when I fell from it. I had it for a year, and I ended up in the hospital for 5 weeks. I was on antibiotic IV for 5 weeks. So when you talk about gut wellness and you think about putting antibiotics into your blood day and night for 5 weeks, you can imagine what happens to your microbiome and to your system. Mm-hmm. But it saved my life. I mean, that's what the true beauty of Western medicine is. They can save your life if they know that that's their job. And they did save my life. But unfortunately, when the inflammation came down, when the perfusion of scar tissue stopped, because it was proliferating. I mean, I was sicker and sicker, losing my hair. There were just so many things that happened to my body. And I was 19. Basically, they had no skills to offer me. They said, sadly, wow, you're going to have a tough time. You're going to leave the hospital and you'll probably be back. You can't have children. And they're just, they kind of named everything that was going to be problematic for me. But they didn't give me physical therapy. They didn't give me counseling. They just said, try your best at college. So this is what we need. We need that paradigm you're talking about, the new paradigm, that probably would not happen too much today. Although as a body worker for the last 35 years, I can say it does still happen, where people are just let out without the skills to heal, because surgery or recovering from an emergency isn't healing, right? The healing really starts very often after you get out of the hospital or after the surgery is over. It takes a long time for your body to recover from surgery or from events that shake it up. And so I walked out of there feeling that I had to find a way to help myself, basically. So I jokingly tell people that I put down my tennis racket and I took up yoga at 19 years old because I couldn't breathe. And I heard that, and 19, this is like early 70s. So yoga and acupuncture, like these things were not really out there, but I found them. And they were really what I feel deeply saved my life, because I got a life. I didn't only live and survive, I could learn how to thrive. And it did take me years, but every year got better, and I could see that there was definitely this trajectory that I would have my body back and that I could learn to help other people. And so, I kind of I call myself more of a healing artist because I'm a little married to being an artist from when I was a little kid. And it is an art. It's something that's created. It's a very creative process. So I learned how to kind of marry my artistic abilities with helping people heal in this way of what are the skills we need to nourish ourselves, to hear ourselves, to not necessarily take what you're being told as the gospel, but to find out what's really going on inside so that you can find a way to heal, and maybe partners, mamas almost, to give us that co-regulation that we need to feel safe so that we can heal. So I feel very, very lucky. I mean, would I have liked if that wouldn't have happened? For sure. I would lie to you if I would say, I sometimes wish that I had had a different trajectory. But on a lot of levels, I'm very grateful for it because it taught me something so deep about myself, about my body, about nature, about people, about relationship, and how I actually could truly serve, because I believe that's what we're here for, to love and be loved, but to serve and to forward our beautiful culture and world. So.
The fortitude as a 19-year-old, Allison, I think just speaks volumes. And also the trust that you must have had within yourself to, first of all, seek out the path for you of what healing looks like. And through that, I imagine really connecting in with the power of your own intuition on this path. And I know that in the book, you really talk about tapping into the power of one's intuition and supporting that through the vitality of the physical belly, weaving that in, I think is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you begin to start focusing in on the physical belly, the gut? And then I would love to start, weaving in these beautiful modalities of breath and touch and the power of healing in that area as well.
Yeah, I think as a human, when we're in pain, we go to where the pain is. And my pain was fully in my belly. That's where it lived. It had started in my reproductive organs, but as a result of the IV antibiotics, as a result of scar tissue proliferating, my bowels were covered in scar tissue. I later found that out because I had an ectopic pregnancy. So even though I was told I would never get pregnant, I did, but I had an ectopic pregnancy and they were able to see inside of me. And so I knew a little bit more of what was going on in there and why I was in pain. But the kind of pain I'm talking about was at one point when I was maybe, from 19 to 21 for a few years, when I went to urinate, I would have to sit I know this is a little graphic maybe for your audience, but to understand the depth of how I came to my belly, I had to turn the water faucet on to have my body relax enough in order to urinate. So I started to learn how to support myself in the inside. What could it be and what was happening in there? So I went directly to where the problem was, even though I knew I could be in my whole body, and that was a resource for me. I didn't take my constant mind and breath and being into my belly, but I knew I had to start introducing it there, because if it didn't heal, I was not going to heal. I wasn't going to be able to move comfortably. I was a singer, and suddenly I couldn't really use my diaphragm properly. So I was very lucky in that I had skills from childhood of breathing because I was a singer. So I understood how the mechanism was supposed to work and how happy that mechanism, that meant so much to me to breathe and sing. I cannot tell you. It was the greatest joy of my life. And so here I was without it. Not that I couldn't sing, but it was so painful. So it really, for me, was pain that led me. And honestly, that's what leads people to me over and over again. We try to uncover. If the pain is in the shoulder, we do go to the breath because the breath informs all the tissues of the body, right? Your diaphragm is your horizontal, really, alignment. And if it's pulling you one way or another and you can't be with it, it's very hard to heal your body. It's right in your center. I mean, it has lots of other amazing qualities, like where your neurotransmitters are made. So how you feel, what your emotions are doing, how you walk, because your lower torso is where your legs are coming from. So I just was lucky in a way that I had some skills to start out with. And I also grew up in New York City, so we were pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to take no for a life. I was going to live a life. And so all of the things that I come from kind of contributed to me finding that way. And then luckily moving to California and becoming much more gentle and slow so that I could inhabit it in a different way and teach that in a different way, in a very gentle way where, if the pain is there, you don't go right for the pain. You find a place in your breath where you can be, and it grows from there. But it is the breath who you are. I mean, it's an expression of who you are in every moment. And so that's where I found the best therapies were, and the ancient therapies as well. They're, from time immemorial, whether it's Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, this is where we start. You start where you are, and your breath is where you are.
Yeah, when I work with folks or even just, with others who are practitioners, and I work with a lot of doctors as well with their patients. And so looking at where they might begin with the gut, it's really interesting that I think especially people who are in pain want to dive in kind of with the hard stuff, and there's incredible modalities and therapies out there. But what struck me was a particular line in your book where you mention the system of unwinding that I want to unwind today, by the way. And so this simple system of unwinding, and how, yes, it's designed to complement any therapy, but that you also believe that going into those harder therapies might actually be ineffective if we don't first really clear and bring that tonicity through this practice of unwinding. Would you be able to speak a little bit more into that?
Yeah, of course. I actually think that it may not even only not be effective. Sometimes I think it's dangerous because people are going far beyond the capacity of their body to start out with. And therefore, they come up against hypervigilance. The body can become more hypervigilant because it's like, well, even if your brain right in that moment doesn't know it's really hard, your body knows. It freezes or it gets tighter or you bear down. And you don't want to be bearing down. The way to heal is to rest, digest, and repair. And repairing is not working hard. Repairing is actually slowing down and becoming quiet, because that's that part of the system. Whether it's when you sleep at night or whether you're taking a pause when you're eating so that you can actually digest your food. When we were little kids and we went swimming and we were told we couldn't go right into the pool, it's because you don't want to be exercising when you're digesting your food. So and a lot of modalities make people work really hard. Sometimes even with breathing, they're fighting against their own system. They're pushing up against kind of a boundary that doesn't want to be pushed up against. So it's like, how do we feel into unwinding? Unwinding is a slow process. It's listening very deeply, which can be very scary. That's why it's nice to have somebody with you who can say, oh, is that what you're feeling? Because I'm right here and we're together and we can go somewhere else, or we can stay with the breath but not do anything. Just let it tell us what's happening in the body. truly what's happening. Oh, suddenly I realize my left side can't breathe very well, but my right side does. Or my breath doesn't really come down below my solar plexus. Or my belly always feels like there's a balloon inside of it. Instead of just, it hurts. And what can I do to push on it or to make it heal? Because again, we're dealing with a Western paradigm of fixing. And healing isn't fixing. Healing is a process, and it's happening, as I said, every moment. So how do we really come into the moment and just be with what is there and get to know and invite what's there? Because it's being held there to communicate with you. Unwinding is allowing what might have happened and frozen in time in a tissue, in an organ, or in a way that you kind of work with your brain body. It's a way for you to slow it down so that it can unravel. Unravel is another way of putting it, so that it can change, actually. If you're going to make it more tense or put too many conditions on it, or there's a major agenda to it, like do these 7 things every day, or breathe 4 seconds in, 3 seconds out, you're not actually listening, you're doing. Does that make sense?
I just want to pause and put a pin on everything that you just said. I love the way that you really talk about unwinding, not just as this system where there definitely are these practical elements to bring in and modalities, but almost like a way of being in this process of healing. And this is so contradictory to the paradigm that we were discussing in all areas of life, I feel. And so I think that's where I see a lot of people struggling. Is it's not just about the dis-ease that they may be experiencing, but it's about this transition into a completely different paradigm of healing. And so I just really wanted to put that pin in there and appreciate your way of speaking into it for folks, because I think that's probably, if you're taking away anything from this podcast today, I think that would really be it. And so now that we've sort of touched on the macro, larger scope of unwinding, I'd love to give maybe a little taster for people in terms of some practical steps that they can take or play around with that. And so for someone who's like has these issues with gut, they are really tuning in right now because they're like, oh my gosh, they're talking to me directly. This is made for me. What are some first steps in this process of unwinding that this person can begin to take?
I think the first step, like we're pointing to, is to slow it down and to not be attached to any outcomes or that it will fix something. And then to just really put your hands on your belly and feel your belly. You don't have to do anything, literally. Just lay down. Put some pillows underneath your knees. Put your hands on your belly and just notice what your breath does when your hands. Does it rise and fall with the inhale and the exhale? What's going on with your breath? Can you feel your breath? Or do you feel vibration? Is it uncomfortable to breathe? We start really at the beginning of feeling the skin, feeling the temperature of the skin, feeling the texture, feeling the rhythms of the breath. So before we go into maybe doing quote unquote techniques to stimulate lymphatic flow or to encourage peristalsis in the intestines, which some of the things that we can do. But before we do that, we want to establish a different type of relationship with our belly, with our breath, with our body. We're deeply listening and starting to make connections. Like, oh, I'm breathing in my belly and my breath is gently, okay, it's slowed down now. I'm not panting because I was panting before. And now that I'm just hanging out with it, it can slow down a little bit. And what I'm noticing is that thing that I always feel in my left shoulder and in my neck, wow, it's connected somehow to my breath. This is how we begin to unfold what our body it has become. And so the first step is always slow it down, feel what's there, sense into it, put your hands on your belly and feel all of those things. And then breathe in and out. Feel how an inhale feels. How long can your inhale be? Can it widen laterally into your rib cage, or does it just stay in a certain place? Where is your breath? Can you exhale, or is it scary to exhale? Because for some people, it's very scary. Exhaling is like, yeah, just keep inhaling, because that will keep me right here and I'm protecting myself. And so what we're doing is very slowly and very gently in small increments, trying to uncover what's actually there so that we can make the shifts and the changes with our breath, and then with our tissues and with our fluids and with our blood and with our nervous system.
I appreciate that you set the groundwork first for technique to then come in, because I think even myself, I definitely find myself wanting to jump into technique right away with a lot of different things. And I think that's also something, it's not just about the excitement. I think it's part of what we were touching in on earlier. It's like this conditioning of doing versus being and receiving, and patience that comes with that. So I really honor that. And, kind of feeling into that, Allison, I want to hear your opinion on this, but I feel like that's maybe like halfway through the healing, is just to be able to bring yourself to this practice in that sort of way, to receive the techniques. What are your thoughts on that?
That's totally, definitely my philosophy. That's the piece that not only enables you to be in your body and receive healing and learn how to be healing all the time, because that's really what we're doing. You make a new stomach lining every 4 days. I would call that healing, right? You make organs every 7 months. You make your bones every 7 years. So we are healing all the time. It's really, really important that we understand that. But going further, once we begin to feel ourselves and sense in on that level, we not only can receive the healing that we need in our tissues and in our blood, but we receive the healing that we need in our heart and in our mind and in our soul and in our spirit, because we might begin to notice that somebody that we're with, or a job that we have, or something that we do actually creates some kind of cacophony in our body, that there's chaos happening, or there's the inability to fully heal or fully be present because we are not starting here all the time. I think this is a culture-wide phenomenon, actually, because we're pushed to thinking what we need to achieve. We're pushed to thinking what the outcomes should be, instead of being here and being excited and inspired to create and to share. And then it comes out, healing is spontaneous. It comes out of the moment. But what is your moment? What's the environment that you create for those moments? So just like I would talk somebody through what I tried to talk the audience through a bit with the beginnings of the healing, I encourage that just sitting with a friend or being with your child and listening to them in that way, so that they can grow from there. We might not have as many of the problems, and the brain actually will develop differently, and the heart will develop differently, because there is a slowing down, a kindness, and an excitement of creativity, instead of oh no, I have to do that. Or, oh God, I have to go to work today and my boss is just always angry, etc. I mean, we could go on so much, but so it's a deeply held philosophy of mine, and I've done my very best, because nobody can do this all the time, but I have done my best to live my life in that way, in my own personal relationships, in the kind of work that I do, and in the places that I find myself, because they all contribute to the nature of my nervous system and the nature of the way my body can continue to heal.
Mm-hmm. When you were describing even just holding space for others, whether it's one's child or partner or friend, And for yourself, I really felt the significance of that, particularly connected in with the messages we might receive through our intuition. It's almost like we have to create that space in order to have direction, to hear it, to touch in on it. And that's one thing that I hear from so many people that reach out to me is sort of this inability to really hear or connect with their intuition. So that's something that we speak into a lot, is that creating space. And what's so fascinating too is with that breath. So in one of the first steps in your book related to unwinding, you talk about belly breathing. It's literally creating space in that area too on a physiological level.
That's right.
Would you be able to talk about what is belly breathing for those who may not be familiar, and how does that work within the system and process of unwinding?
Well, belly breathing is actually the way your diaphragm and your mechanism works. When you're breathing, your diaphragm, which is in your rib cage, kind of like, think about maybe an umbrella attached to all sides of your rib cage, just for imagination's sake. And when you breathe in, that umbrella kind of flattens and moves down inside of your rib cage, because your lungs are not something that breathe on their own. You need this muscle. It's 70% of your breathing capacity to move and create a vacuum so that the lungs can fill up with air. And in the way that happens, the pressure, really not the breath, but pressure moves down into your belly and fills it so that on the opposite end, it can fill the lungs with air. So belly breathing allows the proper way of breath to happen. Because what so often happens with people is through trauma or fear or fright, we hold our breath. And when you hold your breath, you're actually bringing the diaphragm up into the chest. There's no belly breathing there. The improper balance is not happening. You're not even getting enough oxygen into the lower portions of your lungs. So you're not even oxygenating your body as much as you need to. So belly breathing is the first place where we loosen the diaphragm. We start to understand how we can have the same mechanism behaving the way it did, hopefully, when we were born, if we didn't have an event, which I must say I've worked with many, many babies and children, and I help them get back to how they were meant to breathe, or how they might have been breathing in the womb before an event might have taken place, because these events and these fears and these frights might shove that breath right up into the chest. So we're just breathing enough to stay alive. We're panting our way through life. We're in fear, and we're actually not in our center. Your belly then becomes your center. It's your center of movement. It's where you lead from when you walk. When you reach out to touch somebody or massage somebody, if you just use your arm muscles all the time to reach, you're going to be exhausted. It's going to hurt. But if you use the movement from your belly towards, up to your heart, up to your shoulders, and then forward into that person, it's effortless. The breath allows effortless power and effortless movement and effortless oxygenation, because we're using the mechanism the way it should be used. So long explanation for belly breathing, and we need to start there. And then we expand out from there to make it more three-dimensional, but three-dimensional in the torso, in the center, through the diaphragm.
Yeah, I really wanted you to elaborate on that in the way that you did, because I think a lot of these, like breath work, for example, is something that is out there. And so people are like, oh yeah, that's something I want to try out. Or they might attempt to do something at their home with various things they might see on YouTube, which might be all well and good, but it's almost like this deeper understanding of what it really is or what it really means that I think can bring a level of attention and awareness to the body and reverence for that process, which can really help with connecting in with these practices. There is also the work with the navel in this space that I found so interesting, because you speak to this area of our body, the navel, as an artifact. and a bridge. And I really loved reading that. It just opened up all these ahas for me. So what do you mean by artifact and bridge when it comes to the navel? And why does that matter to support, in working with the navel?
Well, it's the bridge that existed between you and your mama in utero. It's where you grow from. It's where you're nourished from, right? So it's your nourishment. And it's still the site of nourishment because behind your navel is your small intestine, so to speak. And that's where you assimilate your nutrients. It's still the bridge to nourishing the whole body. It decides, should I stay or should I go? What am I going to take from what just came down this tube? And it's one tube, right? We say, oh, we have the mouth, we have the esophagus, we have the stomach, we have the duodenum. It's one tube all the way down. So it's a way into the whole digestive system, but it's also into the way you might have received nourishment in utero and through development, because it has that kind of energy. And sometimes we don't learn all the time with our mama for many different reasons how to self-nourish. Maybe mama was sick, or there were things that were not able to happen. So we didn't kind of get a co-regulation we had to learn that on our own, on how to nourish ourselves. And we are meant to self-regulate. We are meant to be these bodies that walk around without somebody carrying us. However, it is the co-regulation that we're offered by learning to receive nourishment through our navel. And then in that area, again, assimilating our nutrients, that really gives us the opportunity to self-regulate. But we need to co-regulate in order to do that. That's another thing that unwinding and a lot of the work that I do with people helps them with, because they have me there to make it safe and to understand it. And sometimes you can do that on audio, with the visuals, with a book. That's a co-regulation, right? Everything is a co-regulation that's being fed into your body that you're receiving. And if you feel safe with it and you can start to understand something, then your body can do what it was meant to do. And so the navel is a source of nourishment to me. And that's why it's also an old technique. That's where Sinead Song comes from. It's a visceral technique. And a lot of the techniques in the Gut Wellness Guide stem from that, but just from my philosophy and perspective, because they're beautiful techniques, but how do we work with them is the question. So the navel, it's right there, smack in the middle of your belly. And it's a good place to get to know and be with. And it could be pretty rocky and hard and bloated. And how do we invite it? How do we understand what's going on there through this small space so that we can start opening it up? Not by going inside of it, but staying on the rim, staying around it, so that we start to get our bodies to understand that this is the source of nourishment.
It's just making me think about what I would imagine so many of us, our relationship to our belly button and our navel. And it's maybe cleaning it out in the shower, or some people even having an aversion to it or being extremely sensitive in that area. So it's just really fascinating to hear this relationship and sort of courtship that we can do.
That's good. I like that.
With our navel. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I also love that you, in the book and in your work, really speak into the power of gentle touch. In your book, you say this feedback system activated by delicate touch has incredible healing power. And it's interesting because I see a lot of folks that have downstream issues like SIBO and reflux and even non-digestive presenting issues that are really stemming from upstream issues, maybe infection, blockages, but especially scar tissue or adhesions from surgery. So those of you who are listening in who may have had appendectomies or C-sections. And I also see a lot of recurrence because of that. And those issues, those physical issues weren't addressed. So I see a lot of people that want to dive into this really deep, hard, visceral manipulation. So I just want to ask you your sort of approach to working with those types of challenges and that difference between the delicate touch and the deeper, heavier manipulation.
I've studied a lot of different modalities. I've studied deep tissue and all sorts of Western modalities also of massage, and they're great and they have their place. But first, before we go and dive deeply, which sometimes happens immediately with a modality, how do we engage the person in their own breath, in their own body, in a gentle way? Gentle and slow, my two favorite words besides love in the English language. It's like slow down. If you slow down, you'll actually be way far ahead sooner than later, because you won't have a body that's fighting and struggling against this bombardment, really. It's almost a violation. If you are really tight and you have pain and you're suffering, you're bloated, you've just gotten over an infection, parasites, there's so many things that happen in our belly, and scar tissue with surgery. How do we soften things first? How do we feel the field of what we're dealing with? Slow down the breath so that the breath goes into more of a rest and repair and digest response. Remember, we have a nervous system, and the nervous system is calling a lot of the shots about how we metabolize, about what our immune system is doing. So if we can really slow down, and then the gentlest touch to start out with so that we understand what's happening there, and then we can shift into working more deeply later. But first, let's establish the relationship, the courtship, as you said. Let's have the courtship. Let's develop a trusting relationship. So then, sure, I can get into somebody's belly that's soft and trusting. I can touch their spine through their belly. I can do that to my own belly now. But would I do that when somebody first walked through my door because it was a technique that could help them with something? No. I'm not going to be the right person for that. If that's really what you're looking for, I'm going to very gently and lovingly say, we need to find somebody who will do what you're looking for, because I can't do that. Although I can go very deep, and there are many techniques in craniosacral therapy, in Asian body work, which is another modality that I use a lot when I'm doing body work. That can be very deep, but you can be so deep. The reflection I get over these 35 years that I've been practicing is, wow, sometimes I hardly feel you touching me, but I feel you so deeply inside, and I feel this change happening, and I'm engaged with it, and it's kind of a miracle. It's not me, it's just because I'm listening and I'm attuned to the person's energy. We're working on it together. And that's deep. Deep is not putting your hand in or trying to rub something out. Deep, again, as we were saying about the culture, deep is actually engaging in a relationship and being there. That's what deep love is, right? It's unconditional, and it's how we need to proceed according to that person. So slow and gentle is the only way to teach, really.
I love that reframe with deep, Allison. That's gold. And I think that's something that all of us can really walk away with today, is considering, instead of this more forceful doing type of deep, what are the other ways of deep that we can practice in our lives and with our health? I cannot believe how fast these go. I want to sit here with you forever, Allison. But I really encourage everybody to check out your book, which is wonderful. It's very practical, in addition to all of the gentle and loving, kind words that you have for those who are in a place of healing. The Gut Wellness Guide, and I will have links to that below. Before we let you go, though, Allison, I must ask you, what is one thing that is currently feeding your wild body, mind, or soul right now?
I play, there's so many things, but I play piano and guitar and sing and give my husband a concert every single day right now, because we are in shelter in place, and I am just such a happy singer. Singing fills my spirit. And sometimes I go outside in nature, in the places that we can walk at this moment in time, and I take my phone camera and I film a scene of birds in their relationship, and I sing something in the background to what's happening on this little creek near my house. So I cannot tell you how nourishing that is to me. And it feeds my wild, because at heart, I am a singer and I love to sing. Who knows? I'm 64, maybe in my 70s, I'll put out my first CD. But I have to say that one other thing I just want to add to your audience is that the book actually has a companion online program that's video, audio, and PDFs. And during shelter in place, we cut the cost in half because so many people find themselves in need of support. They can't go to their massage therapist. They can't get body work. It's a way of having body work and having somebody who can help you co-regulate. And so, and we're going to keep the cost at that level now permanently because people need these things. So you can check up on my website under video and audio if you're interested and if you think that could be supportive for you.
Yeah, such a beautiful offering. Thanks for bringing that in. For folks listening in, what would be the best way to reach you or to connect with your work?
My website is the best, AllisonPost.com. Allison is on, ALLISON, AllisonPost.com. And the other thing I would say that on the homepage of my website is a little film called The Embryo, and it really does speak to children and the philosophy of healing that we've been talking about. And that's a free treat, and I hope that it really nourished your wild for those of you that are listening.
Amazing, Allison. Thank you for bringing your gifts in this beautiful container that you bring it in that is full of love and from the heart and allows us to breathe in this space. So thank you for all that you do and for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me, Vanessa. It's been a pleasure.
Hey there, I made something for you. One of the biggest challenges that I hear from people is that they are feeling stuck when it comes to their health. You're a smart, capable, and creative change maker, right? And you know what you should be doing for your health. So what gives? Well, it's not about willpower. And I wanted to create something that would help you to unlearn the things that are keeping you stuck so that you can get out of your own way and master the mindset of health. That's why I created Wildly Unstuck, where you'll learn the top 5 things that I have found to sabotage your health goals and what to do about them. You'll learn what it really takes to become committed and unstoppable when it comes to your health goals and find the clarity you've been looking for so you know exactly what to do to get back into alignment. And I made it totally free. So if this is something that you want to dive into and create a vision and soul goals for your health and your life and bring your gifts to the world, because we know that we need it, then I invite you to join us in Wildly Unstuck. You can find that at wildlyrooted.com/unstuck. I'll see you on the other side.